Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday, October 22nd, 2014 Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, which is held in the Board of Supervisors chambers. I will like to begin the meeting with a flag salute, and I'll ask Supervisor Euler if he would do us the honor.
My pleasure. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Play ball. Now, if the clerk would be kind enough to call the roll.
Hesh. Holmes.
There.
Nader. Nesbitt. Rohan.
Here.
Jocelyn.
Here.
Trevus.
Yes.
Yukovich. Euler.
Here.
All right. We have a quorum. I will ask for approval of the minutes of the September 24th, 2014 meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the September 24th meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Any abstentions? One abstain, two abstains, any noes? Okay. You got that?
I believe with abstentions, we do need to do a roll call.
Oh,
That
that's
was
right.
The new law.
Okay. So now we need to do a roll call vote.
Hesh. Yes. Holmes.
Yes?
Nader.
Yes.
Whatever.
Nesbitt. Rohan.
Yes.
Jocelyn.
Yes.
Trevus.
Yes.
Yukovich.
Yes.
Euler.
Abstain.
All righty, thank you. And now we'll go to agenda review. Is there anything on the agenda that anybody wants to change or add? Or seeing none, we'll move on to public comment. This is a time for anyone in the audience that wishes to address the board on any item that is not on the agenda. If so, please step forward. Seeing none, we will close public comment and move to the consent calendar. Are there any items on the consent calendar that need to be removed for discussion, or anyone in the audience want to remove an item on the consent calendar for discussion? Seeing none, I will
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Well, looks like we're a little ahead of schedule here. What's up with you people?
Bring you some people.
Oh, no, that's okay. So I wonder if,
We can move to the CTSA agenda.
okay. That's the item I,
Item H.
item H.
So
Oh, item H, yes, okay. So now we're going to adjourn as Placer County Transportation Planning Agency and convene as the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. Moving to item H, fiscal year 2014-15 budget amendment number 1.
Good morning, members of the board. David Melko. We're asking the board to adopt the fiscal year 14-15 budget amendment number 1. The budget amendment is consistent with the CTSA short-range transit plan. Attachment 1 shows the amendment, and Amendment 1 increases the operating revenues by about 4.5%, slightly over $61,000. And this is primarily a result of the final apportionments attributable to the local transportation fund that the board approved in August. And these funds will be used to increase the operating reserve, and there'll be minor adjustments for staff administration and for public and outreach and marketing activities. Overall, the operating expenditures, there's a less than 0.5% increase, and we project the year-end budget surplus to be slightly over $75,000. There are no changes to the capital expenditure budget, and with that, I would entertain any questions and ask the board to approve the budget amendment number 1.
Any questions for Mr. Melko? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back for discussion and
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item H, the fiscal year 2014-15 budget amendment number 1. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. The motion passes. Thank you. There's no abstentions, no, so we don't need no no's. So it's a couple of no's. So now we'll move to, we're going to adjourn as the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency and convene as the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency and move to item I, the fiscal year 2014-15 overall work program and budget amendment number 1.
Yes, good morning, Chair Holmes, members of the board. This item is to provide an update to our overall work program and budget for this year. As you know, the board adopts the budget for the upcoming fiscal year in May, which you did. And as you go through the closeout of the fiscal year ending June 30th and moving into the next fiscal year, things do change and updates are necessary. These are the ones that have happened thus far in this fiscal year. We expect a second amendment usually happens in the spring to address any changes that happen between now and then. A few of the highlights here. First off, as I always mention, the budget balances. I know that's very important to the board, so I want to start out with that. There are a few changes. First off, there is a new work element number 73, that reflects that we received a grant, a federal transit administration grant that will allow us to address an item that came out of last year's unmet transit needs, which is to examine expanding transit services into rural areas of Placer County. So that is now in this work program, and we'll begin work on that starting right after the first of the year. Then there are some interesting items and positive items in terms of our budget. We had a carryover of $47,000 of funds from last year, which is always good news. We received, as I mentioned, the new grant. The projected revenues from the local transportation fund are up, as well as we received some increased funding for some reimbursable projects. So overall, our revenues from all those sources are up about $200,000. We did receive additional funding for our freeway service patrol, which we will be talking about a little bit more in an item further on the agenda, the new FSP contract. We added some funding for additional environmental work for our regional transportation plan. We think the $50,000 we had for the environmental on that is a little shy of what it will require. We also did some other adjustments in terms of our funding for some of our ongoing work elements, like our I-80 and 65 sequencing and the I-80 auxiliary lane project, which we'll also be talking about a little bit later on the agenda. Just to balance out between the two fiscal years, we did, in some cases, more last year than we expected, and some cases less, so it divides between the two fiscal years. We also have some increased expenditures for our Transportation Development Act audit costs, as well as some additional funds for outreach and polling for our funding strategy. And at the end of the day, we added $12,000 to our reserves. And staffing remains the same as ever, has been for at least the last 10 years, at 6.9 full-time equivalents. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All righty. Are there any questions for Celia regarding this item? No, don't see any. Anybody in the audience wish to address this item? Well, first of all, thank you for such a positive report. We're always glad to see these kinds of reports come before us. So I will entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 2014-15 overall work program and budget amendment number 1.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the item. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you.
We're moving quickly.
Okay, then we will move to item J, the contractor services agreement for Placer County Freeway Services Patrol.
Good morning. I will be handling this item. We have two actions we're requesting of the board. We're requesting that the board authorize the executive director to negotiate and sign a contract services agreement for freeway service patrol with the top-ranked proposer, which is Extreme Towing. And should negotiations fail with Extreme Towing, we're requesting the board authorize the executive director to negotiate and sign a contract services agreement with the second-ranked proposer, which is Sierra Hart Towing. So by way of background, the Freeway Service Patrol is a collaboration between PCTPA, Caltrans, and the California Highway Patrol. And there's a memorandum of understanding that was entered into by all the parties back in 2005. And our program consists of both tow and service trucks, which patrol the most congested areas of Interstate 80 and State Route 65 during peak commute hours. And the program is supervised by the CHP. And the goal is to reduce traffic congestion by removing impediments within the freeway and keeping the traffic flow moving and reducing secondary risks of other accidents and incidents. And the primary funding for the program is from the state. We receive a state allocation that requires a 25% matching funds. And the matching funds are kind of pulled together by a variety of sources. So we use the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Funds, also known as CMAQ. We also have funding from the Placer County Air Pollution Control District, and we also receive funding from the local Community Benefit Committee on the Indian Gaming Special Distribution Fund. So the current contract expires December 31st, and so we initiated a process for the request for proposal, and that started on September 5th. And an invitation letter was mailed out to 174 tow companies within the capital region. I know that number kind of seems surprising. It surprised me that there were actually 174 companies within the capital region. The capital region is a region that includes basically the SACOG counties, as well as San Joaquin County and Solano County. And but there are that many, and there are actually more. So we mailed out to 174, and the RFP was made available online on our internet, and responses to questions and addendum number 1 were distributed to the interested proposers and were posted on our website on September 26th. And all proposals were due to us October 3rd. And we received 4 proposals, and there was an interagency team that was put together consisting of PCTPA staff and California Highway Patrol staff. And I neglected to mention that we do have Officer Steve McCumsey here today from the CHP, and he's provided invaluable assistance during this whole process. So when we evaluated the proposals, we looked at 4 basic criteria that are identified in the RFP. And one is the ability to provide the freeway service patrol service as provided in the scope of services. We also looked at their business, financial, and towing service references, their cost estimate, including their hourly contract rate, and their tow business experience. And with that, we also provided bonus points for those tow companies that have specialized tow certifications. An example would be the California Tow Truck Association. They have a training process that is supported by the CHP. And so based upon the review of the proposals, the evaluation team recommends Extreme Towing for the FSP contract, and there were several key factors. Extreme Towing currently has solid current performance with the CHP. They are the existing freeway service patrol operator for the El Dorado County Transportation Commission, and we received a positive reference from that agency. Their drivers are FSP trained, and the majority of their drivers have also received certification through the California Tow Truck Association for light-duty trucks, and several of their drivers also have heavy-duty big rig truck training, which is also considered a positive by the CHP. And they provided a competitive cost proposal, and they provided the detailed breakout of their costs, which allowed us to better review their cost and how they were laid out. And so with that, in conclusion, we're recommending that the board authorize the executive director to negotiate and sign a contractor services agreement with Extreme Towing. And as I had mentioned earlier, in the event that that negotiation fails, then there is a backup strategy with you authorizing the executive director to negotiate with the second-ranked proposer. And with that, I'd be glad to take any questions. I would like to point out, I also believe that there is a representative from Extreme Towing here today.
Okay. All right, thank you. Director Nesbitt.
Yeah, so kind of want to understand this because in the previous item, we talked about Caltrans funding for this is increased by $30,000, but we also have to match that another 25%? Okay. So what are we going to do? Are we going to get more services for that? I mean, we have to spend the money, so are we expanding the service in the proposal? Explain how that's going to work.
Well, actually, in the budget, it does provide for the 25% match
Right.
for the additional $30,000. But one of the challenges is all of the proposers on this contract are their cost proposals are above what we're currently paying.
Right.
So instead, ideally, we would add service for the additional money. That's probably going to pay for part of the increase in costs, and maybe not all. So the end result, depending on the negotiation, and I assure you I will negotiate as hard as I can, is there's a possibility we may have to cut back some service.
Okay. I would like to see just even some brief breakdown of, the top two proposals and the numbers and what we paid last year, so I have some sort of form of reference to look at, when I'm deciding upon these. If we could include those in the future, I'd sure appreciate it.
Okay.
Miguel.
Yes, I have a question. I know the trucks are out there, but I've never seen one. Will there be, I know, Celia, I believe you. I've seen people changing their tires and all kinds of things. Will there be some kind of identification on these trucks other than their Eldorado Towing Company or whatever their name is?
Well, the freeway service, well, the tow companies are required, I think, under the vehicle code to identify themselves on the trucks. So their company logos will be on the trucks. There will also be, when the trucks are committed to freeway service patrol hours, they will be identified as freeway service patrol trucks. And so that will be quite clear. I actually sent yesterday specifications of the dimensions of the signage that should be shown on the trucks. And we have Officer Steve McCumsey here who could also elaborate more on that.
Hello, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Officer McCumsey with the California Highway Patrol. I oversee the Valley Division FSP program, which currently is the San Joaquin area. We have Yolo County, Sacramento County, and as well as your county, El Dorado County. So we have a large area, but I'd be happy to help you guys answer any questions you guys on your questions, sir. Yes, they are marked. Currently on the trucks, they have about an 18 by 18 sign on the side that per our requirements, there's like a statewide guidelines for FSP. That is a requirement. It has a certain logo that it has to have. And they have to have that while they're working for FSP service. Excuse me, while they're working for FSP services. As soon as they complete the service and when they're not on duty, they basically flip those signs around. So that's up to David on what he wants as far as the signage. So I think, as he said, he pass that along to the contractors on what kind of signage he wants. But they are recognized as freeway service patrol vehicles. Yes, basically with our dispatch, they're in contact with CHP dispatch. They use the same dispatch that we use as officers. So they create a log for each call. They also have a electronic device, whether it's a phone, tablet, that they use. So When they pull over with a vehicle, as soon as they pull up with that vehicle, it basically creates a timestamp. They hit like a begin assist button. What that does is gives us a GPS location, and with that same program, I monitor their GPS locations at all times. In the afternoons, we have another officer that works in the mornings. It basically creates a log on that PCTPA has access to as well for the stats on these drivers for your area. It basically gives us a location, the time limit for the assist, when they first started the assist to when they ended it. So how long did it take to change that tire? How long did it take to clear that crash? It gives us what was the outcome of the assist. It also lets us know, hey, were they dispatched by CHP? Did they find it? Who dispatched them to it? So there's a lot of information that's on the website that they have that they connect to, and they're required to have that device in their trucks at all times for those assists.
I'd like to add, Director Yukovich, we report quarterly to the board here on the Freeway Service Patrol statistics. So the next quarterly report will be in January. It's usually in the back as part of the monthly status reports. So
Okay,
that
thank you.
info is there.
Director Nesbitt has a question?
Yeah, so
Sure.
Extreme Towing does El Dorado County right now, and that's one of your counties.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so can you briefly describe your experience with Extreme Towing? What's the response
It-
time, or how did they resolve things rather quickly?
They've been great up there for us. Your kind of area is similar to what they have up there. Your area has a real long beat for both. You have basically 2 beats up here that you guys have. It's a real long beat up here. We go from the county line, Sacramento County line, all the way up to 49. That's one beat. So Extreme has similar out there for the El Dorado FSP. They go basically from the Sacramento County line all the way up to Greenstone, which is a 10-mile beat. Cursory inspections, what I do as an officer, I oversee them. I also go out and do truck inspections on a basically kind of like a surprise visit kind of thing. So I make sure their trucks are, look good. They have all the required equipment. Their drivers have all their required documentation that we require them to have as FSP drivers. So I would say they've gotten either exceeds or outstanding on most of their inspections up there. So, and we're pleased with the outcome. We were involved, and I'd like to thank PCTPA and the board for allowing us to be involved in that. So, but yeah, we're pleased with the outcome. Yeah.
Okay, any more questions from, Mr. Hedge?
I'm not sure whether it would be directed to the officer or David. El Dorado County is big. Is this company big enough to take on another job? And knowing David, he's probably already got an answer for that. Either the officer or David.
Well, the company has assured us that they will be, they're looking forward to the contract, and they said that they could provide the service. And so
I knew you had already looked.
Yeah, just to touch on that, on the bids, what they did is they were required to basically state a list of trucks that they would use. So, they do have the possibility, depending on what the requirement of the contract is, that I've been kind of working with David on that there, whether it's new trucks, used trucks, or whatever. But he has plenty because he basically up there in El Dorado, he only uses one truck for FSP. He only has one truck up there. So his truck fleet is, and Jeremiah might be able to touch base on that with Extreme, but I believe that they would be able to handle the 2 tow trucks and a pickup truck required for your beats out here.
Thank you. That more than answers my question.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any more questions for the officers since we have them here?
You got donuts?
Pardon?
What's
Never mind.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Is there,
Nothing.
since there's no more questions from the board, is there any questions from the audience that want to address this item? Seeing none, we will bring it back to the board for action.
Okay.
Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to move approval of action items 1 and 2.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the action items 1 and 2 on this item. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The item has passed. Thank you, officer. Now, we will begin our 9:15 a.m. timed item, the annual unmet transit needs public hearing. No, Mr. White.
I'll be taking that this morning. So good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. This morning we're asking to hold a public hearing on the annual unmet transit needs process. This is a requirement of the Transportation Development Act from 1971. It requires an annual public outreach component to determine whether or not the existing transit services in Placer County are suiting members' needs. This will be the sixth workshop or opportunity for individuals to comment directly to PCTPA staff on the unmet needs. We've hosted meetings in the cities of Auburn, Lincoln, Loomis, and Tahoe City today, and then we have another meeting scheduled December 4th with the Placer Collaborative Network, which is an organization about 40 different social service agencies, to receive public comment from them also. Any comments received from today's public hearing will be combined with the 95 comments that we've received to date thus far, and those will then be evaluated by staff as well as the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council to determine, one, whether or not the comments received meet the definition of an unmet transit need, two, whether or not those comments can be addressed by existing transit services, and three, whether or not those comments can be addressed by any solutions that are contained in the transit operator short-range transit plans or other transit studies that have been conducted. And then finally, we'll look at whether those comments do meet the reasonableness to meet criteria that's in attachment 1 in your staff report. The draft report will be prepared during the December, early January timeframe and presented to the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council in January, and then presented to the Technical Advisory Committee and to this board in February. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair, to go ahead and open the public comment.
Alrighty, is there any questions from the board before I open up public comment? Alrighty, this is a public hearing, so I'm going to open the public hearing, and anyone wishing to address the board on this item, please step forward. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good.
My name is Sandy Bassett, and I'm the president of the board of the Auburn Interfaith Food Closet. And I'm here to request a minor modification to the Placer County Transit bus that does not currently run in the airport district of Auburn, the city of Auburn, and we would like for it to be able to do that. And we've been working with the county staff and with the PCTPA staff in order to request that change. And we would like to see that change occur now in addition to next year. And the reason for the change is our food closet moved from the Richardson Drive DeWitt Center to the airport district back in March, and there is no bus service over there. And what we've learned by taking surveys from our clients is about 9% of our staff or our clients would take the bus, and that means about 70 to 75 people per month would ride the bus. And right now they do not have adequate transportation. They either are not coming to the food closet or they are getting rides from people who will bring them. And so the 70 to 75% are the people who are coming, who have gotten rides, who have indicated in the survey that they would prefer to take the bus. And many of these people do not have the ability to drive for one reason or another. Either they don't have a driver's license or for some reason they're not driving. And some are walking. They walk from the Auburn Greens, and that is about a 1.1 mile from the intersection of 49 and Quartz Drive. And the walk is not so bad if you're walking uphill with no groceries, but when you're trying to walk back with 4 or 5 bags of groceries, that's a pretty good walk. And then there are seniors who would prefer to be independent rather than having to rely on someone else. And there are several supporters who have also moved. There's an exodus from the DeWitt Center, as you probably know. So there are several organizations that are now located on Loxley Drive or on Earhart Avenue who also are in support of this needed bus service. And one of those is the Sierra Foothills AIDS Foundation and Seniors First, who are now located in the same building. And Pride Industries is located next door to us, and they are also interested in that, even though they do have bus service for the disabled. But the Airport Business Association is also looking for bus service because they think this would be a good addition to the city of Auburn. Right now, people fly into the airport, and Richard Anderson is the president of the Business Association, and he couldn't be here this morning, but I'm speaking on his behalf. Anyway, the people fly into the airport, and then they're stranded. They can't go find a restaurant. They can't get downtown for shopping, and so they see this as an added need for the business of the airport. Placer Independent Resources person is here, and I believe she's going to talk. So I'll let her present her need. And then a representative from the Volunteers of America who represents low-income housing is also here, and I think she's going to talk. But what we'd like to request is your approval for the county and the city to be able to work together so they can implement bus service now and then also approve for next year. So thank you.
So I need you to sign in the,
Oh, okay.
so anyone else that wishes to address the, morning, Tink.
Good morning. I'm Tink Miller. I'm Executive Director at Placer Independent Resource Services, located in Atwood Business Park here in Auburn. And as you have heard me say many times, I also facilitate the meetings of the Best Step Transportation Collaborative, which is a loosely formed group that has been meeting for close to 19 years of social service organizations, representatives of the transit operators, staff from PCTPA, and anyone else who has an interest in transportation issues that cares to come to the meetings. So we have a number of items that I'd like to just put before you, and pardon me, I usually put this in writing, but I've been out of town for a week, so I don't have it in writing yet, but I will get it in writing and give it to staff. But if I could just point out several items. The airport loop, absolutely, we strongly support the going forward with that and recognize the need for that. I won't repeat everything that she said, but we agree with her comments. We see a need for more mobility training. So many people, especially our seniors, and the rapidly increasing proportion of the population who are seniors, they don't know the resources available for transportation, and they don't know how to use them. They're oftentimes fearful of embarking on the trip because they're not sure they're going to know how to get back home. There are people who have difficulty understanding how to read schedules. So the ambassador program is a tremendous asset in that regard, and we would like to see that grow, sustained as well as grow, because we think the need is increasing. More marketing as well is tangential to that same need. We continue to advocate overall for seamless transportation in all aspects across the region, and particularly for people that use dollar ride services. I know that the agency has been awarded a grant for rural transit study that'll be starting, I guess, after the first of the year. So in particular, we'd like them to look at the possibility of service on 193 between Lincoln and Auburn as a way to perhaps enhance a seamless trip for dollar ride services, at least so they wouldn't have to transfer between operators at the Galleria because they're crossing a jurisdiction. And in keeping with that, we certainly support the current process that's underway in discussion between the City of Lincoln and Placer County Transportation to merge those services, because we think that also contributes to a seamless ride. So we're supportive of that. Ongoing for many years and continues to be the need is the Highway 267 issue up in South Lake Tahoe between Kings Beach and Truckee. I know that a lot of work has been done, continues to be done. We just want to keep it on the radar screen. This is a need, and so we definitely continue to support moving that forward in whatever ways we can. regarding workforce transportation, we get feedback that people sometimes bring forward the need for service later in the evening, more extended hours on weekends, primarily around getting to and from work, up and down the hill between especially the Auburn area and the Roseville area. And I don't have specifics on that, I'm sorry. And I just heard yesterday, we had a transportation meeting yesterday of the collaborative, a staff member from the Welcome Center out at DeWitt, which is a project that's operated by County Health and Human Services under the adult system of care, that they have a growing need for additional bus passes for people to get to counseling appointments, to probation meetings, to health care appointments. And I know that we have a bus pass subsidy program that's in development, but it just underscores the need that exists and is growing. The county adult system does provide some bus passes, she said, for their participants, but oftentimes they just don't have enough to go around. And if they miss, especially, she said, their probation appointments, they could end up back in jail when, in fact, they're rebuilding their lives. And so the cost of a bus pass can make a huge difference in someone's life. And I'd just like to conclude by thanking you all and our executive director, who's fabulous, and her staff, and the transit operators, because ongoing for many, many years that we've been doing this annual meeting, you just go out of your way to be collaborative and supportive, and we've made a huge difference over the years in transportation because of all of you, so thank you.
Thank you. Point of clarification, the route
Yes, sir.
between Kings Beach and Truckee is in North Tahoe, not South Tahoe.
Yes, what did I say?
You said South Lake Tahoe, so it's all right.
I need another cup
We
of coffee.
were just up there yesterday. So.
Thank you.
Can you sign in the...
I will.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Flora Chantos. I'm a community organizer with a local faith-based nonprofit called Placer People of Faith. Many of our churches participate in the Auburn Interfaith Food Closet, and we range from Meadow Vista area to Roseville. We're also hoping to move into the Tahoe area in the next few months. And the work that we do has led us to meet a lot of community folks with a wide spectrum of needs, but the one I want to focus on today is obviously the transportation need. We are working with a grant from Placer County Health and Human Services to help sign folks up for health care, help them understand the rules and follow through and find a plan and a service. And part of this grant has a transportation component, which allows staff, which reimburses staff to take folks to and from clinics. We make a lot of house calls and help folks fill out their Medi-Cal or covered California applications in their house. And I just want to bring to the attention of this committee that it's incredibly frustrating to finish all the paperwork and the person finally has their health care, and then they have no way of getting to the clinic or to the doctor's office. So something that our organization would like to put forward is seeing a free community shuttle that would go door to door. There's so many incredible services throughout this county that we feel are underutilized because folks don't have access to the transportation. And it's for a variety of reasons, whether they don't have a license or they can't afford a vehicle. But to have this simple fact being the reason that folks aren't getting the care they need and that is available to them, I think is something we can easily fix as a county. This is the first transportation meeting I've attended, so I'm happy to follow up and organize focus groups. It's one of the things we do best as a community organizing network. We will be at the Placer Collaborative Network meeting this month as well as next month, so we will be staying in touch with this issue through our churches and folks who have named this as a necessity locally, and we hope that we can see some movement on this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can you sign that?
I would say normally we don't really respond to the testimony, but I do want to bring to your attention Health Express, which is designed for exactly what you're talking about, non-emergency medical transportation. So we'll follow up with you on the details of that, but that's a service that has been ongoing for a number of years and is very successful, excuse me, in addressing those needs.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anyone else? Morning.
Good morning. I'm Pamela Galloway. I'm employed with Volunteers of America, Northern California, Northern Nevada. I've been here before, and as you know, we own and operate several low-income senior properties throughout Placer County. I'm not here with a lot of facts and statistics. I just want to urge you to support having the bus line in question to the Interfaith Food Closet extended now rather than later, because I'm someone who works with our low-income seniors daily, and my role is to help them remain independent, and they're fiercely hanging on to that independence. Many of them no longer drive because of health issues, or they simply can't afford to support a vehicle. So they very much rely on our area food banks, the Interfaith Food Closet being a very important one. They very much rely on our public transportation. I've had seniors get, as far as the 1.3 miles and then have to do the walk, and they've done it. Last week I had a 77-year-old resident from Auburn Ravine who did that. But now that winter's coming on, that's quite a challenge, and of course in the summertime it's quite a challenge, just as Sandy was talking about as far as walking that mile with bags of groceries. So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Pamela. Be sure to sign in. Mr. Warner. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Todd Warner. I live in Auburn on Gray Fox Lane, and I serve on the board of the Auburn Interfaith Food Closet, and also as fundraising chair. And I just would like to ask your support today to extend the bus route on Loxley Lane and Earhart, and continue that for next week for two very important reasons. Number one, public welfare, and number two, public safety. And to do that, I just want to tell a very quick anecdotal story. 2 weeks ago, a gentleman from my church, I heard on the grapevine that he needed to go to the food closet. He's a disabled man, age 60, lives in the apartments near the Salvation Army, and he literally depends on the food closet for his groceries, among other things. He could potentially walk a mile up Loxley Lane and Earhart, and with a grocery cart he could probably make it, but he's a disabled person, and the stretch along Loxley Lane is a dangerous stretch with hills and stuff, and it's a 2-lane road, and so he needs that bus service to provide groceries for himself. So on his behalf and on behalf of all the families, the dozens of people who would depend and benefit from that bus service, I would ask your support today to enable that route to go now and then continue it next year. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. Anyone else wish to address the board during this public hearing? No. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Allison McCrossin. I'm a resident of Rockland, and I work here. And my unmet needs seem so trivial compared to the people that have spoken before me. But on October 6th, actually, I ride from Sierra College to this office, and I usually catch the bus that gets me here at 7 o'clock. And my husband drives me to the bus stop, and he waits with me until the bus gets there. And then he goes to work, and I go to work. So on October 6th, the bus was late, and I didn't know it. And, I waited for 10, 15 minutes, and then we just made the decision for my husband to drive me to work. And he works in Rancho Cordova. So, and then when I got here, I found out that the bus was actually just late. And I had tried to call some people that I thought were going to be on that bus that morning, but none of them answered my calls. So I was hoping that somehow we could have an app or some kind of text service to let us know if the bus is going to be late, because I would have waited and I wouldn't have made my husband drive me all the way to work and then go to Rancho Cordova. But that would be really helpful, just something. I understand that there's GPS on the buses now, and I have happily been taking the buses, so this is just one instance, that, I was impacted. But, and then the last couple of things are really on my wish list. I know quite a few people that live in Rockland, and it would be helpful for them to actually park at Sierra College. Is there any way that we could work with Sierra College to have parking there? And also the Penryn Library has a new express model where they have the greatest and most popular books there that they don't put on hold. And is there any way that we could have a bus from Auburn to Penryn that runs throughout the day? So those are it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Allison. Are there any other people that want to give testimony to the board regarding this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion or comments or direction. Yes.
Yeah, I had a question on the routing on 193 from Lincoln to Auburn. Is that because it seems to be shorter if you were going to Auburn and you lived in Lincoln to go on 193? You can get this answer later. Or is it to pick up people? Because it's pretty rural on 193, so I'm trying to figure out what the justification for a route on 193 would be.
I think I have the history. So I'll be the first to take this stab at answering the question. I believe the comments with respect to requesting service on 193 is because of the demand for the people that live in that corridor. And also so that's one, and then also just because it might be an easier connection from somebody that lives in Lincoln and works in Auburn, and vice versa, who lives in Auburn and works in Lincoln. So that service is included as a service to be studied in the Placer County transit plan. As Celia had mentioned, we received a grant for a rural transit study, and so that route will be looked at as part of several areas. But it will be a hard route to implement because of the nature of the roadway, and because, as you pointed out, it's a very rural area, and so the demand is going to be light and sparse, and so. But we will look at it more closely.
Any other questions?
Yeah, David, along that line, in the actual report of findings that occur each year with this, is there or could there be a greater direction as to how some of this might be able to come to fruition? I was just thinking of the example you were just giving. Well, this is a really difficult one, but does the report make suggestions for either sources of funding or who might provide a service, or if there's cooperative agreements that various people in the area might put together transportation, or just the fact that 267 hasn't been served for 15 years and it's in there every year? Or 193.
Well, those are all good suggestions. I think with respect to the 193 service and what we did with the rural transit study, having worked on the report last year, I batched all of the comments that related to the rural areas, and there was the opportunity to pursue grant funding, and it just seemed to be kind of an opportunity, to recommend that we pursue a grant study. And we were successful on that on the first try. So we had that recommendation in the report, and so that was part of when the report was brought to the board, and as part of the recommendations, the board approved that, and so that gave us the authorization to pursue the grant, and we were successful. So I'm not working on the report this year, so but I would assume that we would be able to, to continue, that sort of
Pursuit.
Yeah.
I'll add that, every request has a different flavor to it. And so the responses have different flavors to it. Sometimes it may be, for example, if the request is just something that is not going to be able to be accomplished under any circumstances, we may not go into a great deal of detail other than to explain why that, maybe it's something that you can't do under the law, something like that. But for those that we can see a path towards implementation, those are almost always, in fact, I think always spelled out.
Okay, that's good. Even Allison's comment there, immediately you think, God, we got the next bus system going in parts of the county, and is that something that PCTPA could push to, or make Mr. Garner aware of, and to see if that's something that could be added or spread further, if it isn't, which I don't know that.
Yeah. No, and I do want to emphasize that all of these comments are shared with the operators. And there are a number of comments every year that are really operational tweaks that really are better addressed by the operators themselves. We don't really have a role in that, but we pass along that information to improve the bus service and make it more user-friendly.
One other thing, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank the staff. I'd asked about getting the meeting notices posted in our bus stops in Loomis, and they did it. So I want to thank everybody anybody that was going to take the bus saw the notices. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All righty. Any more comments from directors? I've got two comments. Number one, I'd like to see the Loxley Lane extension expedited. We're coming into the holiday season and hopefully some winter weather, and so whatever we can do to expedite that, I'd really appreciate it. And then number two, I attended the workshop with Placer Independent Resources and Mr. Hoyt, and I just want to thank you for an excellent presentation, and it was very clear and actually helped me understand a little bit better about what we actually do here. So thank you for your work. Okay, since the public hearing is closed, we will move on to our next item. Thank you all for coming. Thank you. So now we'll move to item K, I-80 Auxiliary Lanes Project Proposed Alternatives.
Good morning, Chair Holmes, members of the board. We're going to be giving a presentation on the Interstate 80 Auxiliary Lanes. And our consultant project manager, Liz Diamond from Dock and Engineering, is going to be presenting with me also. So we have several project partners, including Caltrans, the Federal Highway Administration, Placer County, City of Roseville, and the City of Rockland. And we had our first kickoff meeting in June of this year. We actually have two locations with this project. And so location one is eastbound on eastbound Interstate 80 between State Route 65 and Rockland Road. And location two is on westbound Interstate 80 between Douglas Boulevard and Riverside Avenue. And we've established 5 key goals for the project. And our focus for this project is actually on reducing traffic congestion and improving safety. And we'll continue to update these goals based on input from the board and also as part of our public outreach efforts. So let's start first with eastbound Interstate 80, which is location 1. And the main concern with this location is related to safety. As you travel along Interstate 80 eastbound, the southbound State Route 65 ramp merges and then that lane drops. And then shortly after, east of State Route 65, you have a second lane drop. So we have a safety concern there. And then at the Rockland Road off-ramp, traffic at that off-ramp is backing up onto the main line. So we want to try and address some of these safety issues with this project. And of course, traffic congestion is a concern also. So we have two photos in this area. The top photo is showing you where that second lane drop occurs on eastbound Interstate 80, and then the bottom photo there is at the off-ramp to Rockland Road. For westbound Interstate 80, the main concern here is traffic congestion. Anyone traveling from the Roseville area down to Sacramento probably routinely hits this traffic congestion, especially in the morning. And of course, in this location, as you travel westbound on Interstate 80, there are 5 lanes as you approach Douglas Boulevard. And one of those lanes, the outside 5th lane, traps to Douglas Boulevard. So we only have 4 lanes between Douglas Boulevard and Riverside Avenue, and then we have several on and off ramps. And that's what's creating the traffic congestion in this area, and that's routinely, especially in the morning, backing up towards Eureka Road, Atlantic Street. And we have some more photos of that area. That top photo is looking west from the Douglas Boulevard off-ramp, and then the bottom photo there is looking east from the Riverside Avenue overcrossing. So I want to give you a brief update on where we're at. All of these projects require project study reports to start the projects, and Caltrans actually completed those for both of these locations. And last year, the board allocated $7 million from savings on the I-80 bottleneck project so that we can move forward with the environmental process for this project. And that's where we're currently at. And if we're able to identify full funding for the project, we would likely start construction in 2017. And with that, I want to turn it over to Liz Diamond from Dock and Engineering. She's going to walk through some of the proposed alternatives.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here. As Luke was saying, this project has been in the making for a while. We've identified with Caltrans' help, of course, and a lot of our project partners, a need. And at this point, as the project has developed and several alternatives or options were looked at as to how you might deal with those needs, we're now moving into the phase of the project that we call the project approval and environmental document phase. And as part of that phase, we're going to advance the design of these auxiliary lanes more precisely, and we're going to be able to tell better the exact footprint and where it will lie physically. And then with that, we can look at the different environmental studies, such as noise, cultural resource impacts, biological impacts, and the like. I'm sure you're familiar with the various environmental process that you have on a project. But when we start that project, project approval environmental document, or PA&ED phase, we need to make sure that we're bringing forth the alternatives that the board and the community wants us to look at. So those have been vetted pretty well through the project study report phase. But this is where we want to touch base and make sure that we're going to go into that next phase with everybody on the same page. So talking about the project alternatives, what we'd like to discuss with you today and describe in a little bit of detail the different alternatives. Now, the first build alternative is basically what we've been talking about, an auxiliary lane in the eastbound direction between State Route 65 and Rockland Road, and an auxiliary lane in the westbound direction between Douglas Boulevard and Riverside Avenue. Now, there is a second build alternative that we want to consider through this next phase of the project. That is the same auxiliary lane in the eastbound direction, but on the westbound direction has a little bit of a twist and would be converted into a 5th lane extension. And I'm going to go through these in a minute here. But I also want to hit on that we have a no-build alternative, because there are impacts and consequences of doing nothing. And so it will be important through the process to highlight what those differences are, so that when you're asked to make a decision to approve the project, you can determine whether the cost that you're going to spend, the funds you're going to spend on a project, are worth it, and compared to if you do nothing. So we're going to help you with that by putting together an environmental document that will highlight the differences between these 3 alternatives. So let's start with location 1 and the existing condition to make sure everybody is familiar. Location 1 again, and I'm going to hopefully be able to point. Maybe I'll use my own pointer. We're obviously here in location 1. I just like to touch on here, obviously make sure to orient people that, we have a few here in the audience. Highway Interstate 80. If we go off the right of the page, we're headed to Lake Tahoe. If we go the other direction, we're coming from San Francisco. State Route 65 is coming in from, Marysville, Lincoln, and so on. The Galleria is up in this area. So State Route 65 is coming on to Highway 80 eastbound, and then there is a ramp off at Rockland Road. Fairly well-developed area, not really dense, but it is. We have some open woodland areas. We have some more dense development here, housing in neighboring. We, of course, have Sierra College up Rockland Road. Now, the existing configuration, as you come from the west, we have 4 through lanes, the inside lane being an HOV lane. We have State Route 65 coming from the north in the southbound direction and merging onto that 4th lane, and that's what Luke referred to as the first lane drop. So this lane is merging into that 4th lane and has to compete with traffic that is coming along. As they merge, they then need to get over one more time because we have a stretch of the highway that is only 3 lanes right in here. So the HOV lane designation stops, the 4th lane has to move over, and 3 lanes continue. As that lane continues, you then have a choice to go straight or to get off at Rockland Road. So these lane drops cause people to stop and start, and you end up with, you can have side swipes, rear enders, etc. The traffic on Rockland Road, when it backs up, and if it backs up beyond the storage capacity in that ramp, then you have stop cars on the freeway and you can have rear ender issues. So those are the safety concerns that Luke is talking about. Now, let's talk about the alternatives. Again, alternative 1 and 2 are the same in the eastbound direction. So I'm only going to go through it once, and that refers to both. On this slide on the top, we see just a repeat of what I showed you before. So you have it there for comparison. We have the 4 lanes coming through. We have 65 merging. We have the lane drop, and then we have a choice to get off. In the auxiliary lane option, that 4th lane would just keep right on going, and it would, the 65 ramp would merge into that 4th lane, but it would continue, and you would not have to get over. Now, some people will certainly get over because they're going to continue on to places east. Some will stay in the lane and get off at Rockland Road. I like to point out this other little arrowhead. The 3rd lane would have a choice to continue. So up here, the 3rd lane, you have a choice to continue or get off. You would still have that choice to continue or get off, but the 4th auxiliary lane would be a 2nd lane off. And that would provide more storage up into the intersection and reduce the backup onto the freeway because you'd have this whole aux lane as well. You also would have less weaving. These people trying to get to the right-hand side of the road to get off, these people trying to get to the west side of the road or the north side of the road to continue on. It just gives more space and more option to do that, and it usually then allows it to be done more safely. We do recognize that Rockland Road, the City of Rockland, is advancing and studying options for improvements to Rockland Road, and we will, of course, coordinate with that. But they are unique, independent projects that, can go together, move forward independently, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that's the eastbound improvement. Basically, the red is the auxiliary lane that would be added. We have a fair amount of right-of-way to add that lane, so we don't see any major issues. There is some gentle terrain sloping there, and we anticipate we'll have to deal with maybe some retaining walls, some aesthetic treatment on them in order to hold that hill back. And so as part of that design I'm talking about, as we go through this next phase of PA and ED, we'll be able to lay out those grades and show where the walls are and get a better idea of how high they are, where they need to be, where there might need to be an exception or a move, fit around something. So that's what's in the work to come. So now let's move to location 2, which is the westbound direction, a little bit more complicated with a number of lanes. We have, again, from Douglas to Riverside is location of the westbound recommended improvements, or proposed improvements, I should say. Again, very developed area, more densely developed than the eastbound direction. We do have some open areas. We have Linda and Kirby Creek that come through here. So here's I-80, again, Tahoe, Reno to the right of the page, Sacramento to the left of the page. Here's Riverside Avenue, Auburn Road, of course, down here. Kirby Way does not have ramps, but crosses I-80. We have a little bridge right here that would need to be widened that goes over Linda Creek. Well, we can argue some people call it Linda Creek, some people call it Kirby Creek, so don't be confused by that. The freeway in this location, as was mentioned, there are 5 lanes coming down from the east. So when you're way up by 65, you have 3 lanes coming down the hill. As you pass 65, a couple lanes are added. You've got Taylor Road, you have offering, so there's a variety of things that are going on there. As you approach Douglas, the 5th lane is what we call a trap lane and must exit. So at this location, the green upper arrow is that 5th lane disappearing, basically, can be becoming an exit. And then you have a choice in this 4th lane to either continue straight or to exit. We then have traffic from the loop ramp merging into that 4th lane. Then we have traffic from the slip ramp moving into that 4th lane. So these people getting on now, some of them want to get off at Riverside. Some of them want to continue maybe an exit or two. Some of them want to get over here in that HOV lane. So they're all fighting their way across the freeway to some degree. You then have the people coming down the freeway, and some of them are trying to get over to get off on Riverside Avenue. As you come down that 4th lane, you have this exit lane, which is a choice. You can go straight or you can get off. Then, of course, we have the loop-on ramp and the slip-on ramp at Riverside, which becomes then a 5th lane. And that 5th lane continues on. As you get down to Antelope or Eureka and Antelope and so on, that 5th lane carries you all the way until you get to the split at 80 Business 80. So this 5th lane continues on. So that's the existing condition. So if we were to go on now and talk about the alternatives, we'll talk first about alternative 1. This one is the traditional auxiliary lane. Okay? So again, the top picture is a repeat of what I just went over for comparison, and alt 1 is here down on the bottom. In alt 1, we still have the 5 lanes coming down the hill. We still have the trap lane and the second off at Douglas, and we still have the 4th lane coming through. The difference is the loop ramp and the slip ramp would merge into a protected separate auxiliary lane, unlike up here where they are getting into the 4th lane. So you have this 5th lane coming across, which of course requires space, which would require widening on the outside of the freeway. Now, early in the process of the project study report, and I know it's been presented to the board before, there was some discussion about do you widen to the inside, do you widen to the outside? The PDT did talk about that in depth. They also listened to what the board directed and talked about at their previous meetings, and we're looking at an outside widening here. And that's because that inside shoulder is very important on a big freeway like this that carries so much traffic and has multiple lanes. You don't want someone to break down in the number 1 lane in the middle and have to get all the way out across 6 lanes of traffic. So we do think that that's important, and we are looking at the outside widening option for the westbound auxiliary lane. So we have, again, the loop and the slip merging onto a new lane that would be independent. Of course, they can then move over or move off, and you have more options to get around. And then it would exit at Riverside. The 4th lane would continue on. Now, there might be some fine-tuning as we do the traffic studies in terms of, a second off or, little things like that as we do our precise design and do the traffic studies. But this is the basic alternative that the auxiliary lane is. Now, the second alternative is what we're calling the westbound 5th through lane or 5th lane extension. And this is how it compares. Again, at the top is the existing. On the bottom, the difference is this 5th lane that was a trap lane off would not be a trap lane off. It would be a choice. You would continue to drive on this 5th lane if you wanted to. The Douglas Loop would merge into that lane. The slip would merge into that lane. Right now, they're merging into the 4th lane. So they would not have to compete with as much traffic because the traffic would be split over 5 lanes instead of 4 lanes. They would then continue on, and they would have a choice to continue or to get off at Riverside. The loop ramp and the slip ramp would, of course, go into that 5th lane as they do now, but you would have to compete with the traffic that is in this outside lane. So let me show you a slide. So this is existing, and this is alternative 2. So this next slide shows you the difference between alternative 1 and alternative 2. In the middle, it's basically the same darn thing. That physically will be in the same spot when we lay it out. The differences will be right here at the ramps on either side. In order to fit this 5th lane, there's a little bit different geometrics that occur here. So there are a little bit different impacts when those lay out. So as part of this next stage of design, we'll lay out those 2, and you'll be able to see what the differences are. The other thing is the traffic analysis will help us determine which one has the greater traffic benefit. Now, our gut and our talks with our traffic engineer and with the commission staff, we're thinking that, alternative 2 is going to provide a little bit better traffic benefit. But when we do the analysis, we're looking at the network, and we're looking at not just, what's going on 80, but what's going on these local roads that are adjacent and the adjacent intersections. So as part of the next phase, we'll be looking at that. So the difference, again, is how these lanes exit. We would have one exit lane here. The preliminary traffic numbers show that would maybe work just fine. It would still feed multiple lanes at Douglas. So that's the difference between the two build alternatives, and of course we would also be studying the no-build alternative. There are some pretty tight right-of-way areas. This is looking from behind the freeway, so I-80 is on the other side of these two walls, and this just to point out that we do have some very tight constraints. We do have some room here, so there are a couple locations where the wall might have to be removed and moved back, and that's because of those ramps I was talking about. And in this next phase, we'll be laying that out to determine, do we have to move something? Does it have to be closer to the right-of-way line? Are there little sliver takes that might be needed at those ramps? And then we would be able to bring that back and go through those with you. This next slide is just the build alternative comparison. And gives you, again, these are rough numbers based on order of magnitude, based on the preliminary designs, and our take from what we know so far. This, of course, will be fine-tuned as the PA and ED, or project approval environmental document phase, continues. With that, I want to turn it back over to the commission staff, because they might, I know, want to comment on this slide, and then there's a couple more things they want to tell you about. And I'll be available for questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. So I want to walk through the project schedule, and then we can kind of get into any questions you have. So we're currently working on the environmental phase, and we are going to have some public outreach, of course. There's several community-focused public. We'll actually be in the neighborhoods holding focus meetings probably in July of 2015, and then we'll be coming back for a public hearing in December of 2015 for hopefully approval of a preferred alternative to move forward with. And of course, with that approval from Caltrans and from the PCTPA board, we'd be able to move into project design. And so as Liz mentioned, the next step for our environmental process is to do the traffic analysis and other technical studies, and we're asking the board to concur with these 3 proposed alternatives as we move forward into the environmental document. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, comments from Mr. Nader?
You say the removal of on alternative 2 puts it only one exit lane at Sunrise, and you say there doesn't seem to be any problem there, but there's a lot of traffic that goes off at Sunrise. Are you truly comfortable that only one lane exiting is going to be sufficient, that there won't be some stacking occurring?
Yeah, so obviously that's going to be addressed during the traffic analysis, but preliminarily we are looking out through year 2040 for our traffic analysis, and it has indicated, and we've been coordinating with the city of Roseville, because that's a relatively new interchange there, that traffic would operate acceptably with a one-lane off-ramp through year 2040.
And if memory serves me correctly, that sound wall that's between Douglas and Riverside was just completed within the last year, 2 years? Maybe I know there was some...
Yeah, the I-80 bottleneck project was completed in 2011, so 3 years.
3 years ago. Seems like it would have made some sense, because now we're talking about moving the wall again, and moving walls are not cheap. Is there some reason why we didn't think about that, or at that time?
This predates Luke a little bit. Yes, we thought about that at the time, and Caltrans was the lead for the bottleneck project because they had the most money in it. We were told at the time that there was not enough right-of-way to do the auxiliary lane project, because by all rights, this auxiliary lane should have been part of the overall bottleneck project. We did not find out until we started on the I-8065 interchange project and some of the traffic analysis done from that, that the consultants that we have on that took a second look at that project, because in studying I-8065, the parameters for the traffic study are fairly large. And they said, I think there is enough right-of-way to do this. So you're exactly right, and it's less than ideal that this has occurred, but we used the information that we had at the time and went forward with good faith on the original project, but we still see an opportunity here.
Well, it sounds like you had it on your radar screen, but Caltrans didn't. Would that be a safe?
I could go along with that.
Yeah.
I do want to just follow up on that briefly, because what we've found is that alternative one, just the auxiliary lane, which is at the top here, we might need slivers of right-of-way, may need to move the sound wall slightly. Alternative two, pushing a fifth lane through, there may be some emergency access issues with people's backyards. We need enough clearance space between the sound wall and their house. And so there are one or two residential houses in that area that are going to be very sensitive as we move along in this study, and maybe a deciding factor between which alternative we move forward with. And so that'll be part of the focused outreach meetings and coming back to the board also.
Is there a possibility you'll have to purchase some homes?
There is the possibility, but we need to study that further.
To my right, are there questions?
Yes.
Oh,
Thank you.
Director, you.
I would agree, since I think that sound wall from Douglas to Riverside was put in a long time ago. I remember when it was done. But I also am familiar with that area, and if you widen that out, you may be into some people's backyards or actually their houses, and that would be a concern. Although alternative two is, I think, the only alternative. Alternative one doesn't really work that well. You need that for the lane. The other issue is from 65 to Rockland Road. We really need to get rid of that one lane that's there now that you merge, because that needs to be extended up to Sierra College, because if you're in that lane that ends and there's a semi-truck next to you, you stop. And that's what I had to do. There's not enough room. Once you get into that lane, you see the sign that says merge, and you only have, that's probably one of the shortest merges I've seen with Caltrans. You only have a couple hundred feet where you need to kick over. So I think that's one of the main priorities, is to extend that lane. Then the third question has nothing to do with these two projects. You're talking about Rockland Road starting to back up onto the freeway. The problem in Loomis, which is the next road down up the road, the Horseshoe Bar exit is starting to back up onto Interstate 80. I guess my question is, how would we go about studying that off-ramp?
That could become a board direction to staff to start work on that. There was a project study report started on improving the Horseshoe Bar interchange back in the mid to late 90s, but without any hope for funding of that was set aside.
Thank you.
Director Nesbitt.
Just some comments between alternative 1 and 2, and the comment about Douglas Boulevard and that one lane on alternative 2, that one exit lane would handle it till 2040, did you say?
Yes.
By the time this project's complete, within 22 years, we're going to have to add another lane there. So that would tell something at Douglas. So that would tell me that alternative 1's more attractive, because we're going to fix the lane, and then we're going to be fixing the off-ramp again, in 20 years. So it's reminiscent of having to move those retaining walls for the auxiliary lane, if we could have planned for that. So as far as I'm concerned, because of that Douglas exit, alternative 1 is more attractive. My comment.
All right. Any other questions from board members? Anyone in the audience have any comments? Well, I think there is concurrence among the board to go ahead and proceed with the alternatives. Do I see nodding heads? Mm-hmm. All right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much. We will now move to the Executive Director's report.
Yes, I have a couple of items that might be interesting to the board. First off, I have some good news. Last year, which is the federal fiscal year ending just a couple of weeks ago, Placer County jurisdictions delivered $7 million worth of projects in the Regional Surface Transportation Program and the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality, or CMAQ program. And overall, the six-county SACOG region delivered about $70 million of projects. And the better news about that is because we have such a great delivery rate, there is something that is known as August redistribution. And I can go into arcane details of how federal transportation money works that may or may not make sense to anyone, but they are the rules. Essentially, other states weren't able to use their money. If you've used all your money, you can get some of theirs. And that has allowed us to take advantage of essentially our full allocation of money. There is what is known as obligational authority that, say, you're supposed to get $10 million. They say, okay, you get $10 million, except for obligational authority takes back anywhere from 10 to 20% of that. So what this August redistribution has done is added that money back in. That means that the jurisdictions can move forward on more projects faster, and that's always good news. The second item I have is to introduce to you Kevin Yount, who is our new Caltrans liaison, replacing Jeff Morneau. And Kevin is sticking it out to the bitter end of our meeting. So welcome to Kevin. And then two other items for your schedule, just to remind you that in follow-up to our meeting last month where we talked about the outreach for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and Regional Transportation Plan that we're doing in conjunction with SACOG, that outreach meeting is tomorrow night, 5 o'clock, as part of the food truck event that is at Johnson Springview Park in Rockland. So that's an exciting opportunity to find out what's going on and potentially grab new audiences' interest in long-range transportation planning. And then I wanted to mention that the Tahoe Transit Summit has now been scheduled for November the 13th, and I'll be speaking about some of our efforts on our transportation funding strategy at that meeting up at the Truckee Tahoe Airport, and it's being organized by one of your board members, Ron Trebus. So that's something else that may get onto your calendar. That concludes my report.
All righty. I just want to make a comment about the outreach program for SACOG. I was I'm on the transportation subcommittee, and they actually laid out how that outreach works. And so it seems that it's going to be a good way to capture people that ordinarily wouldn't come to a workshop. So it was brought home to me during that meeting. So just wanted to make that comment. Are there any more direction to staff on board? Question.
That is correct. Yeah, there is some on Sunday.
Anything else? Seeing none, there are informational items for your perusal. And our next scheduled PCTPA board meeting will be December 3rd, which will be a joint from November-December meeting.
Right.
So with that, thank you, everyone, and I will adjourn this meeting.